Hey, great, everybody. Glad you could join us today. We have with us Seth Neurenberg, and he is a specialist in security, and we're here to give our full attention to him today and learn more about what he's doing out in the healthcare world and discuss how this has greater impact in society, as we've seen many things recently that are front news. So we'd like to move forward that conversation. I'm Wayne Wilder, and I'm here with Kyle Henson, and we'd like to kick this off.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, thanks for being here.
We'll get that right out there.
So I got to ask, what is that going on in the background there? Looks like a clock or bracelets.
It's a hooky game. It's you just like kind of like a bar game. You just like throw the rings and try to get them. The pegs are numbered, so you got to try and get them around, in different orders.
I thought that was like something to do with virus attacks or a threat warning system.
Well, so that's one of the things with me. I'm not the typical IT security guy. A lot of times, the typical IT security guys, they have all those stickers on their laptop of all the security products that they use. Mine, I have one that says like coffee. I got a couple of band logos. It's completely random. One of them's for Yeti. I have some car parts.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Very cool. So how did you get into security? Like what drew you to the field?
What drew me to the field, what actually was my juvenile delinquency sort of years. We talked about this a little bit before, but I mean, using that creative power for good, it was one of the big motivators for me, and I also kind of just like knowing how things work and seeing how I can actually be helpful for people. So it's been kind of interesting. It was sort of just a meandering course through life that kind of convinced me that I'd be good at it, and wound up getting into it. And then here we are a number of years later, and I realize I've always sort of been this way.
So I can't think of a more topical thing right now. Everybody's talking about security. Everyone's talking about ransomware with the pipeline. So, what is your perspective on that whole thing from an insider? Well, not an insider, but from
Well, yeah. There's a lot of things that kind of go into that. I'm not sure how much you guys heard about the SolarWinds issue from before that, but I believe that was kind of underplayed just because people don't understand exactly how it works. Um, we're starting to see a lot of the fallout from that. When I first saw that there was something going on with SolarWinds being compromised, I'm like, oh, we're going to hear about that for the next 10 years.
Can you kind of share more about that? What do you mean by SolarWinds?
So what SolarWinds is it is a network monitoring product basically. It's used especially with like internet service providers, for example. If I am an ISP,
Okay.
I have I have a core router over in this location and it's down. I got to know about it right away, and that's what SolarWinds does. Is it on in its base product, it is something that monitors network, the presence of the equipment on it, and it does that through just like actively talking to that piece of equipment at all times. And so you can essentially just have a network map of everything that is within your network using this product. Now, when you're a cyber attacker and you get into somebody's account or computer or what have you, one of the first things that you want to try to do is figure out exactly how to maintain some persistence, so that way you can get back in when they when you want to attack later, you want to look at something else. And so usually what happens when you do that is you map out the network. A lot of security researchers like myself got hip to that game. We're always looking out for the network mapping, activities. But if I own the product that has it all mapped out for you, it makes those things a lot easier. And so if I have just this backdoor into SolarWinds, not only can I see everything of what's on your network, um, SolarWinds can also be used for software distribution. It could be used for, I mean, if you own that, you own everything.
Hmm.
So um, when big companies like Microsoft use it, yeah, I might, I might own your SolarWinds instance, but hey, I can use that to just kind of sit there and just watch everything that you're doing, um, build malicious code into other products. Exchange, we saw some fallout from that before, or even to the other base products. Same thing for internet service providers. I mean, Comcast got hit with this. There's a lot of people that got hit with this. Um, the the reason why this is actually super important is because the original attackers only really had some specific government entities that they were interested in getting their fingers into. But then the reason why it's going to be something that keeps going on and on and on for years is because they've sold all the information off to other people that, hey, you know what, maybe I wasn't necessarily interested in hitting healthcare, but I bet you these guys are, and they're going to pay me top dollar for all the money or for all the data.
So can you tell me a little bit about that, about this selling the data? Because I read something about the Darkside doesn't attack hospitals, but now you're saying you can sell the information?
Well, so Darkside themselves, they don't. They're just kind of like a ransomware as a service type of provider. And so they mostly just generate the code, customize it for their customers, and then they let their customers have at it with whatever they want to do. So I mean, they have some of that kind of plausible deniability, but they do run it like a business. Um, you know, so yeah, it's interesting because they said, "Oh, well, we didn't mean to do that." And, well, okay, but you still sold it to somebody who did do it for that. Okay,
So,
well, hopefully that stays.
and my question may be premature or maybe out of the logic, but I think for a lot of people that watch this, right, and they understand, okay, yes, people can hack into the system. They can, once you get that back door, they can get access to data, and they can collect it, and they can sit back there for months and and see what data to them is important, so they know how to sell it. But how do these guys actually get in? When you think about all the intelligent people, all the large investments of IT, how do they, you know, how they get in? I think that's one part of the question. The second question is, how do you prevent that?
And therein lies the biggest question. So normally, there's a reason why we see a lot of phishing,
Okay.
and it's because it works. Um, you know, the the user is sort of like the weak link in any posture, and that's kind of something that we've known for a while. Um, but the problem is that we are also terrible at treating users because we don't have quite the imagination to kind of just get onto the level with users. Um, you know, and I have a whole sort. I could talk to that for hours and hours and hours. Um, but there. I mean, there's a number of things. So the users have a lot of things in common. So there's phishing that works on there. There's vishing, like I call you up, I pretend to be somebody, that works on users. General scams work on users, and and it's that, and that's it. And it's particularly prevalent in healthcare because we I mean, healthcare people in general, their main job is to try to be helpful, and they try to know everything that they can about a situation or item before passing it on. And so for me to just tell, a medical person, hey, if you suspect that this is phishing, just pass it on. Well, they don't really work that way. They're, if I suspect something, Well, I'm going to confirm it first. That's a little bit more how medical folks work. And I think a lot of our cyber attackers also know that. They just they want to be helpful. They want to make sure that they get everything taken care of. So I don't even have to fish the first person. I can just pretend like I'm a lost puppy. Say, hey, can you get me to, you know, this other person, whoever is in charge of X, Y, Z, and that first person will be helpful, and they'll say, hey, yeah, you need to talk to this person. Now, whenever I'm the next person that's being brought in, I see, oh, there's already been this conversation between somebody I know and whoever this is. They look like they're just looking for help for this. What can I do for you? And it's wide open. So that's usually how, at least with our users, that's how that winds up happening. But then there's other things too, avenues in, easy avenues in IoT devices, like the Internet of Things. Um, I'm if I go in and own a camera, I'm not necessarily just wanting to sit there and like watch people walk in and out of a certain place. It's I'm trying to use that camera for the relationship that it has with the network. I want to use that camera as a pivot point to get to something actually important. And it just happened to be the weakest link in the path of least resistance.
So how would you address the training issue?
There's a few ways. I mean, the low hanging fruit, which never seems to ever actually happen in a corporate environment, is the um, changing of the default admin credentials. It's like the number one thing that never happens and could prevent the most harm. So, you can, generally speaking, you can go and look at a camera and see, oh, this is a Sony model number, whatever. Go on Shodan, look up the default credentials for it, and then and most times, as long as you're on you're able to see that camera on the network, it's going to be just wide open. So there's that, and then there's also like segmentation. You can segment your network to where only the cameras can talk to the cameras, and that's it. Um, Consumer grade stuff, most people just don't do that because why would you just hook it up onto the Wi-Fi router and I can get to it from my phone? It's great.
So, one of the things we talked about on LinkedIn, and I appreciate you starting to educate me, but it was a real shock to me to realize what a business hacking and the other side is, not the not defending like you do, but the attackers see themselves as a business. Could you educate people a little more? What is that? Tell us about that.
Um, well, so a lot of it is like what we were talking about earlier, that ransomware as a service. Um, you know, there's a lot of ways to just monetize a lot of different things. Um, you know, some of the bigger persistent actors, that's what they do. Is I mean, they make variants and they sell it to whoever wants to use this to attack whoever. Um, Many times um, it's not even like like, oh, like our group is specifically going after them. It's like, no, it was just somebody else wanted to do it. We had what they needed. We sold it to them. So there's a lot of that happened. And I mean, I don't know. There's other things too. Medical records in particular can be used to construct an identity. Um, especially um, for younger patients. Like I'm at a pediatric hospital. It's somebody could have taken out loans in my name when I was 7 years old, and I would have had no idea on any of it, neither would my parents until all of a sudden it was too late. So, um, medical records, being able to construct a complete identity makes it real easy to just pull a bunch of money out and hand somebody else the bill for it.
So I'm curious, is there any predictive modeling when you take a look at where these guys are doing with ransomware? Like, is anyone putting together any thoughts, like saying, hey, today they're doing this, but we think this is the next point of attack, or we think in theory it can escalate to these other areas, and that's why we're going to make these investments, or harden things this way. Are there strategy sessions along those lines when you start seeing security breaks along just with just patient data in general?
There's a few ways that happens. So there's a number of companies that they try to be like forward looking. They try to, you know, see exactly, where they are with what the emerging trends are and what that looks like that's going to lead to. There's always going to be some of the armchair experts too that say, oh, this is going to be a big huge problem. The only real way is to just kind of just see exactly what's happening day to day.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, for example, fine, they breach the network, right, through phishing or through an IoT, and they can capture data. But how do you prevent them from, let's say, shutting down the imaging or access to certain modalities?
um, so there's technological pieces to that. Some of it is like software whitelisting. Like if this computer knows that it is only allowed to run programs 1, 2, and 3, and anything else that tries to run on that won't actually execute. There's some items like that. There are some behavioral programs that will map out how a system behaves on a normal basis,
Hmm.
and then anytime it goes outside of that, um, then it'll send us an alert. We can investigate it, and you know, oh, is this something new that you guys are doing, or is this not supposed to do that? So that's actually a lot of where our team, develops relationships with other parts of IT, and especially with the imaging folks, is we'll see, hey, your imaging device over here is acting a little strange from what we understand it to do. Is this something else that you guys have going on, or whatever? And so we usually try to use that to um, work with other teams and make sure that we know everything we got going on.
You know, every every 2 or 3 months, a report comes out that says how many millions of patient images are out on the internet. So I get asked that question a lot, and being a PAX person, it worries us. So how true is that, and what do we do with that information? How do we protect?
And it depends, right? So a lot of times, just how ransomware as a service is, there is also such thing as just storage, online storage. Especially if I'm a small shop, maybe I don't have a data center that can host everything for me. So I just get like a G Suite, like a Google Drive, or like the same thing as Microsoft Azure or something like that. Now it's supposed to be set up specifically for my clinic or what have you. But if I don't belong to a larger organization, where else am I going to put it? If you're talking about getting a centralized server, within a clinic off in Butte, Montana, just throwing a name out there because that was the first one I thought of. Um, you know, if there's nothing else there, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and just keep adding hard drives to a single computer, and then have the coffee spill attack happen. Um, you know, so there's the things that we also have to kind of keep in mind about with my team, especially at my organization, is you know silly things happen to those types of systems, and that's why we have the data center, but not everybody does.
Did you just call that a coffee spill attack?
That's right. That's right. You know what? And it's funny how often that actually surprises people because even at my organization, we have some devices that are older that are not on the network, and that's what happens. Is people say, "Well, it's not on the network, so why do you care about it?" And I'm like, "Well, I could just dump this on there and see how you like that." And I get the no, 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 please don't do that. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, and now I'm frozen again. Of course, look at this.
Seth, I like to get from your point of view, like if you can, like a specific scenario, a story to where um, I don't know, maybe to where this really caught you by surprise, right? And how'd you resolve it? You have something like that you could share?
Well, actually, one of them was it was from one of our ambulatory clinics. There was some eye care stuff that was taking. I mean, it was an imagery device that was just for specific for eye care, and it was kind of older. And it was literally a server, but it was on a cart on wheels, connected to this Frankenstein thing. Um, and you know it was actually the the people that were in that clinic that they were reaching out to us. They were saying, "Hey, we want to not deal with this thing anymore. We have an upgrade. You know, picked out one that we would think could integrate nice and easily with packs and do all this other stuff. But one, we need to get this data off of it. Two, our leadership is really not they're saying too much money,
Right.
so what can we do? And so I go in, I take a look at it, I'm like, this thing absolutely cannot connect to my network. Because I mean, it was old enough that I think even if we tried to, I don't even necessarily know if it would work. um, but I'm like, I have ways to get data off of it that don't involve being put on the network, but I can write up this nice little piece of paper that says, "Hey, everything about this thing is terrible. Information security recommends these types of things," and so I can give the clinical people this report saying, "Hey, this is how bad this thing is." You can use They can use this now as ammo to go back to their leadership saying, "Well, hey, the infosec guys said that we can't put it on the network and we can't do it. We can't use it to accommodate these new workflows." And then here I am sitting in a design meeting the next week of exactly um, what are we going to do to replace this guy. So yeah, there's ways that we can actually be helpful to clinical folks too. I, I realize that being the cybersecurity guy, that I'm more widely known from such films as No or Change Your Password or my personal favorite, Don't Open That Email. But you know, I actually prefer to be helpful.
No, that's interesting. You bring up the clinics, though, right? Like they have a legacy-based equipment, and there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of clinics that have legacy ultrasound, right? I mean, they're in databases that don't even DICOM compliant, and leadership says, okay, this is a risk. I want that. What can we get off of this thing, and whatever. And then you have security concerns, and then the vendor will actually look to you, saying, okay, can you make this work? Can the data be pulled off of here? What do we do with this? Because there's still images on here or things like that.
One, and the other part of it is too is those regulatory requirements, the things that other people don't necessarily think of like how long is this retention period for,
Mm.
how long you have to maintain these records and that kind of stuff too. So yeah, absolutely. With those older devices, we got to still make sure that data is available whenever it's needed. So um, that's why the coffee spill attack is actually something that's really important for those folks because there are requirements for retention and the isolated modalities that we have. They're designed for the smaller clinics, and you know it's better for larger organizations to integrate them into packs, but um, from a vendor perspective, it's interesting because like, well, then what do you make? Do you make stuff? Do you make both? Do you make something that's good for large organizations, small organizations, kind of both? You know, so yeah, we find ourselves in that kind of interesting conundrum fairly frequently.
So you mentioned the coffee spill attack, but in looking at healthcare in general, what are the other types of attacks that occur, and what attacks are most prevalent for healthcare?
Most prevalent, definitely. I would still say I would default back to like the phishing and that kind of social engineering because it works. Um, you know, the we still see, if I'm sitting in my firewall right now, I'm seeing scan attacks, from all, there's too many to mention. Like, there's never somebody not scanning the network. But in terms of what actually works, we find that, if I don't send links or attachments in my first few emails, and I build up a trust relationship between not only my recipient and I, but also between the email filters and I. I can build up that trust relationship. I can use that to get you to click on whatever it is I'm sending you later on down the road. So whether it's, you know, Word documents that have, macros that run a PowerShell script and kick off things from there. It's a lot easier to do when I just get someone to let me in the door. Because I can ping off the firewall all day, every single port, and and if I don't have a way in, it's a lot harder to do that.
So what's the defense against that? I mean, we want to say users don't do that, but there's got to be something. They will. It happens.
And we do, but the problem is one is we don't know how to reach our audience, and you know, there's like this sort of interesting thing within cybersecurity within the community of actual like cybersecurity people. It's just like, oh well, attacking things is a lot easier if I have somebody let me in the door, and it's really easy to just trick people into letting me in the door. And there's like this logical leap that just assumes that, well, people are stupid, so just trick the people. I kind of disagree with that. I have seen exactly how difficult some of my users, how difficult their job is. And so that means they cannot possibly be stupid. So what else is there that's going on? And I've been asking a lot of questions about that, directly from clinical people. I'm like, hey, you had this multi-factor authentication attempt and it looks like you approved it, but do you know why? And I've heard everything from, honestly, dude, I was doing 6 other things and this thing was just annoying me to death and I just wanted to get rid of it. And that would let somebody into the system, right? So I've heard stuff like that. I've heard stuff like, I don't actually know what the multi-factor thing means. Well, okay, it means somebody knows your username and password. But if you don't put it like that specifically to some people, it becomes an item of workflow. Yeah, I'm logging into something, I got to do something on my phone, and now I'm in and I can do whatever I can do. But whenever it just like pops up on its own, what does that mean? So it's been interesting because I've been trying to take this approach of making sure that I actually do approach things from the perspective of the users first, before I get into how I approach things as a cybersecurity person. I actually do have a pretty good example of that.
Okay.
you know, when I first got here, all of our cybersecurity operations were actually outsourced to another company.
Hmm.
So we were building my team from scratch, and I got a ticket, and it was from this super irritated ER nurse, saying, I need to get rid of this security pop-up that's telling me that something is trying to take over the camera and microphone of this computer. This is my second request. And so that last little bit there saying this is my second request, that's the part that kind of got me a little bit curious about this. Because I'm like, you know, normally if I'm a cybersecurity person, the first and unflinching reaction is to say, well, what is it that's taking? Like, you need to know when something is taking over the camera or microphone of your computer. Because again, it's the same thing of, you know, if I own the camera on your computer, I can use that to pivot into the rest of it.
Hmm.
So, you know, and so that's usually the sort of that response for that. But I'm like, this is a second request. That means to me that somebody got annoyed enough with this that they got told no, and then they're like, yeah, but no, you should really relook at this. And now again, that particular pop-up, if I disabled it for that particular program, it had to be done for the whole entire computer.
Yeah.
So, and I'm still kind of looking at this. I'm like, I really don't like it. But what I wound up doing was I wound up getting on a phone call with this lady, and let me tell you, she was fired up. And anybody that knows that you don't make nurses mad. That's not a good thing to do. But I asked her. I was like, hey, you know what? Like, I see this as your second request. So what exactly is it that you are trying to do when this pop-up happens? And she just had this stone cold voice on the phone, and she was like, and I'm going to try to impersonate it just to see if I can get the effect. But she said, I am trying to take a picture of the patient for the chart. And I'm like, oh, so that's like literally the point of what you're trying to do is have this program take over control of the.
Hmm.
Got it. So now I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, so I have to turn this off for this whole computer. You know what? I have a vulnerability management agent I can stick on there and make sure that it's not susceptible to all of, make sure it stays up to current patches on other things. But beyond that, if I leave that pop up on her system, what am I teaching her to do?
To ignore it.
Blindly click through security prompts and just do what you want to do anyway. And that's actually a bigger problem, if you ask me. So, much to the surprise of a few IT people, I was like, yeah, cool, pull it off there. We'll just we'll just drop this little vulnerability agent on there and call it good.
Okay, so the question on everyone's mind is, when talking to a real security person, do you have tape over your laptop camera?
I actually have a little thing. Mine's much more fancier than the tape. I have a little sliding plastic thing.
Very high tech.
And actually, one of the things that I do too is I carry around extras of those, so that way when I do see somebody that has a post-it note over their camera, I'm like, hey, I can bribe you with one of these. You want one?
Right.
That's cool.
Well, I mean, I ask because you mentioned cameras 3 times now, and there's a meme going around that has a Zuckerberg, and there's a laptop in the back with tape over the camera. So I was wondering if that's a real thing or if that's
I've
just
seen
us
that.
being paranoid.
Yeah. I mean, it's a real. Actually, I would if I had my other laptop, I would show you one. But yeah, I have those covers on pretty much every laptop camera that I have. Again, not so much necessarily about taking a look at this weird looking thing all the time, but there are pieces of um, with this podcast recording software, right? I'm on a conference with you guys, and somebody else that's watching, they could, in theory, use the website to kind of tap into my camera, use that as a pivot to get into other areas on my computer. Good luck. I mean, I'm not an admin, and we have that pretty tightly wound up, but um, that's kind of the way that mindset sort of works. It's a lot like picking locks. You try one thing, and if it doesn't work, you try something else.
So I got a thought here. When we talk about cameras, right, and we talk about I guess just healthcare continuing forward, talk about like telehealth in itself, right? It's been around for a while, but now it's being used ubiquitously. So how do you harden that? How do you protect that service line without that becoming a point of failure, right, or a point of interest?
It's definitely going to be a point of interest, and it almost, yeah, it's going to be a point of interest. I mean, because there's some things that you can do, but there's only so much,
Okay.
right? So, if you have hardened servers, hardened architecture, encryption from end to end, that's one thing. But at the end of the day, a lot of times you're talking directly to patients,
Hmm.
and you're talking to them on their devices, which are on their networks, which most people just, I mean, they don't care what's on their network. And it's one, it's lack of knowledge. Two, it actually is lack of caring most times. And you know, so there's a lot of things that you really just don't have in control. Um, with telehealth, I mean, if I see, I mean, I have, with all the servers that we have with that, I mean, yeah, I have my behavior detection agents on it. So if somebody's trying to come through a session and take advantage of any kind of software vulnerabilities, if it's talking to my server and I see it and it starts doing something crazy, like, oh, conference software.exe is now trying to spin off a PowerShell. Well, block that. um, you know, so but that's the interesting part of this. I mean, is nobody really knows where it's gonna go from here.
Yeah. Yeah, because you talk about behavior, right, and how people want to help each other, especially when they like help put in the right direction. Or let's say, because Kyle, I'm thinking like from the point of view of a patient. I use my mobile phone. It's my camera's being accessed. I'm now gaining entrance into the portal of that hospital, right? So the EMR information is in that portal, etc. Things I don't even know, but just theorizing. And then you have that direct conference going on with a care provider, possibly somebody who can help you with your billing. So um, it just seems like it's kind of endless, isn't it? In terms of where the vulnerabilities really are.
Yeah, and just the other part of it is just I mean, we're not all that great at figuring out second and third order effects before they actually happen. Just as a human species, you know, um, how do you know unless you know? That's when they move from timing belts to timing chains, they yes, they are a lot more durable and they can go for longer. But when they go, I mean,
Hmm.
what else? What can happen from there?
Yeah,
Well, you don't know until you know.
catastrophe, man, catastrophic. So tell me, what are the things that you actually love about your job? What's fun about it? What's rewarding?
To me, actually, everything. Um, I was actually in the middle of writing an email off to this one lady who is which department? She's a respiratory therapist and was looking at trying to get this program installed for to help them dissect some data that they're gathering, but just get it to a much more granular state to where they can improve their diagnoses. And you know this was one of those. exactly like what we were talking about. She was sitting here trying to install this program and trying to install this program, doesn't have the admin rights that you would need to do it. Calls up the help desk, super angry and whatever. Um, but then, I was able to back her up and I say, hey, but like, by the time I get this ticket, there's all of these things that have happened. You've identified something that you can improve on with your work. You found a solution for it. You went and tried to actually go and get it, just having good initiative. Um, and then now you're perceiving that you're being blocked by a security prompt. But walk me back. What is it that you're trying to do? Oh, okay. So this is what this is for. Got it. Okay. Now that I understand it from your perspective, hey, check this out. I can not only can I help you get this onto your computer, but also, if you ever have to get your computer reimaged because you got a virus on it or something, because that never happens, we can also package it up to where it'll automatically redeploy to your computer, so you don't have to talk to me next time. So being able to talk with doctors, nurses, RTs, nurse practitioners, imagery folks, saying, hey, contrary to popular belief, I can actually make your life easier. And whenever I say that, I can show them how, and they get that sudden sort of moment of, oh, I didn't know that you can do that.
It sounds like I try to find a way to say yes instead of just defaulting to no.
Right. Exactly. And that's honestly that's my favorite part, because I can tell people, like, not only can we do that, here's how we can make your life easier. And getting that moment of realization of just like, oh, we are able to do that. Oh, well, yeah. Can we do that? I'm like, okay, let's do it. Um, the eye care clinic. I keep defaulting back to my eye care guys, but that was because when I first got here, I mean, I walked into a room and I saw 4 different computers that they had to log into 4 different ways, and I'm like, you guys realize that I can like get all of those things to not only talk to each other but log in the same way, and all you had to do was just, call me.
Yeah, single sign-on, right?
Single sign on and that kind of stuff, and you know you don't have to print things out and then take them downstairs and have them scanned into a chart. Like, let's reduce our human error a little bit.
Oh, they must have loved you.
What's that?
They must have loved you after that.
Oh man, yeah, but they had just accepted it as like this is normal for them. And I'm like, well, it doesn't have to be that way, guys. Like, you don't have to have your passwords on a post-it note right here, because, but yeah, it was accepted as normal, and I'm like, you guys are adding so much to your own headache that I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, could we? Let's actually fix that properly.
All right, I hear your buddy.
Yeah, I closed it in here on accident. I'm actually gonna let him out right quick.
No problem.
There you go.
At least he didn't, he didn't photobomb us and crawl in front of the camera.
We have to literally jump on him. Walk across the screen.
No, thanks for sharing this stuff. It's really cool because I mean I think and Kyle can back me on this. Just people in the world today, they read about ransomwares, pipelines, hospital records, and I think they don't know where to start, where to think, or ask the questions, right? And then we look to experts like yourself, thinking, well, where are we going? What's next? Is there going to be this new leap of technology, do you think, coming forward that could change the game? Because eventually something has to change, right? Otherwise, we're all going to be held captive somehow.
I think one of the biggest changes that needs to happen is the way that we approach training. Because again, so the the users kind of being the soft point, um, and they get taken advantage of because it works, and the technology portion comes after that. There's some things that can help prevent against some actual, some accidental clicking here and there. But at the end of the day, I mean, I describe this as the car that's broken down on the side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
You got six guys that are standing around looking under the hood, scratching their heads, going, "Oh well, this gasket looks like it could have been done a little bit better, and and this hose over here seems like it's not quite thick enough, or whatever." Never mind the fact that we have, this driver over here who
Right.
never got out of third gear and was flooring it the entire way down the freeway, right? So that's how we. So that's how we. That's how I conceptualize it. But I mean, at the same time, how do we approach the driver? And and we say, we're really good at saying, well, if you think you're getting close to the rev limit, you go ahead and shift gears. Well, that's where the analogy about ends, because
Okay.
in healthcare, it's their job to take care of patients, and it's our job to take care of the computer.
Yeah. So education and training, right? That's really kind of the foundation.
It is, and the problem with the foundation is that we've been doing it wrong. We don't take our users into account. We have no idea how they work, and our attackers also know that. When I say, like, our users, they are helpful by nature, and they investigate and they find stuff out, our attackers know that. And when you get this sort of annualized cybersecurity training that says, here's how to spot a fake email, and it gives you 10 tips that are semi-applicable at best now, it doesn't help. I can tell you to look out for a capital I as opposed to a lowercase l
Right.
all day. But if I'm talking to a nurse who's on hour 14 of a 12-hour shift, that's the last thing that's on her mind right now. His order, I should
Right.
say. Is looking out for that kind of thing. All I can see is something that needs to get done before I head out of here, and I don't want this weighing on my mind while I'm out. So I'll just handle it right now. So trying to address the social aspects of
Okay.
that kind of thing. When I'm sure you guys know, working, in healthcare, burnout is a huge problem right now. And I'm frozen again. There we go. But so burnout is it's a huge problem again right now.
All right. Hold that thought. Hold that thought, Kyle. I want to hear you. I want to hear your thought on this.
I can go on. I can go for hours on burnout. I'm doing my doctoral research on burnout. I've been studying it for about 2 years now.
Yeah. Well, and so
Huge problems.
so if you're looking into it, and you know that a lot of times too, sometimes people they're just, the last thing that they want to do is sit there and stare at a computer for another few minutes while I have to go through this stupid cybersecurity training that tells me to don't click on emails again. You're telling them what they already know. They do it anyway. So we probably should figure out why. Um, with the 10 tips and tricks to spot a fake email, now you're just wasting people's time and adding to that burnout because they have to sit there and take and click through this training thing, quiz, bobber.
Well, I'll tell you, as a user, I skip that because I think I already know that. So I try to figure, like, the fun for me is trying to figure out how to click through fast enough to see how quickly I can complete the training that I'm not actually listening to.
Totally, yeah. That's definitely not the first time I've heard that. The other part of it is that whenever I'm doing the annualized training for how to handle hazardous chemicals and that type of thing, I'm like, yeah, I do the same thing. I just click through. I try to click through that as fast as possible too, and just get the answers to the test and be done with it because frankly I don't like the way they do that training either, right? And so I've been trying to come up with ways that um, are respectful of people's time for one, but then also for two actually creates a sort of longer lasting impression, because that's what actually helps people learn. Rather than just clicking through and taking a test and getting a little checkbox or whatever. I think I saw a meme at one point that said I think Rick Astley has done more for cybersecurity than all of the training in the world about clicking on unknown links. Are you familiar with that one, Kyle? Well, uh, yeah, Rick Astley is like this. He's a singer from like the
Mm-hmm.
'80s, and
We know who he is.
people do the Rick Roll thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, check out this like super cool video. Like never gonna. Now I'm gonna get it.
So Seth, I want to ask you, and forgive me because I should have asked this earlier. Tell me about the hospital. How large is it? How many clinics out there are you working with?
Uh, our hospital is 9 floors for the main campus. We're affiliated with the University of Colorado as well,
Nice.
and we also have some other like main full hospital locations. Um, but then, I mean, I think we have 30 some odd clinics out and around too, and looking to add to that. So, yeah, we got quite the footprint up here.
Yeah. No. I clearly you have a big print with your community, right? And I think creating that trust with the community is resting in guys like yourself who are out there every day, protecting the infrastructure so doctors can treat patients.
Well, and you know, I don't know. I think a lot of the time too, people, especially from the user perspective, um, are more comfortable with you when they think that you can do your job, so that they don't actually have to do their job plus yours, right? That detracts from their abilities to do both. And so whenever I'm able to show people, hey, this is how I can actually make your life easier, I can offload the job of being your own IT person from you. That way, you can actually focus on doing, your actual job of what you were, trying to implement this for in the first place. As soon as they kind of get that perception of like, oh, like people are here to help. Well, this is awesome. I don't have to do this job too. That means I can focus on my own job, and
Hmm.
that's something that can help outcomes.
So one more final thought. What would you like people to know, Seth?
Oh man. Actually, that's a good question. Um, I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there about cybersecurity is that it is very much a customer service industry now, and it's going to continue going that way. You're not really going to see a whole lot of successful people in cybersecurity that are, you know, sitting out there in their parents' basement with the hoodie on and hacking into stuff and doing that kind of stuff anymore. It's very much a customer service industry now.
Hmm.
If you're scared to talk to people, um, you might want to find something else because there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from just talking to people.
Sure.
That, and I would say cybersecurity incidents and the field itself is getting to be much more uh, broad in scope. When people think of a cybersecurity incident, they're thinking, oh yeah, someplace got ransomware and this is what happened with this and that. A cybersecurity incident can be something like that, but it can also be, this patient monitor grew legs and walked off.
Right.
Um, well, I mean, I have stuff that can find it, but you know, uh, there's that. There's we got an influx of spam that can be considered an incident. There can be, oh, we're participating in this research study and nobody knew about it. We just shipped a bunch of data off to this company, and well, that's a problem too. Doing the education of users, doing audit support, doing identity and access management. Those are all sorts of things that are wildly different in what their responsibilities are, but they all are starting to fall kind of under our scope. So there's systems designs, there's all kinds of stuff that we're getting into and trying to be helpful with, and it's not just an exercise in telling people to change their passwords.
Right.
I think in today's world, cybersecurity is a patient care issue.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Actually, one of the questions that you had asked the last time we spoke was about the craziest thing that I had ever had happen. And I came up with it was right after I got off the call with you that I thought of something, and it was this guy that actually once was on my team, and he was. I have no idea what was going through his mind, but at a certain point, he came across this laptop, decided he was going to re-image it so that he could use it, for I don't even know what, because he already had a laptop. And then, fast forward a month or two, and the chief admin officer came around looking for it. Well, it was because this laptop was supposed to go to an MRI.
Mm.
And he had imaged off $50,000 worth of software on it. And instead of saying, uh-oh, yeah, I messed it up, it's right here, sorry, whatever. He tried to play it off like, oh, maybe it got recycled, maybe it went to this place. And he tried so hard to cover his tracks.
Mm.
Now, insider threat is a thing in cybersecurity, and it looks a bunch of different ways. That there's people hear insider threat and they think, oh, disgruntled employee. Well, it also covers somebody that's well-meaning that just let somebody in, and it also covers people on the cybersecurity team that are doing dumb things. And so he wound up not working there much longer after that, but he sent the CAO on a wild goose chase just so that he could try to cover his tracks. Well, we found out about it. And yeah, he was definitely not on our team for very long after that. So that one was a crazy story in and of itself, because it was like we had this manager that just came up to a few of our teammates and I, and he was like, "What do you know of what's going on in this location today?" And we were kind of mad about it. We were like, "Well, what I do know is that this guy isn't doing any of his work." He told us that his exact words were, "Well, your ignorance at this is probably your best defense at this point." So naturally, we got a little curious, did some digging, found out exactly what had happened. He forgot that I had access to the camera system at that point. Totally just busted him doing it. I'm like, man. So that was a crazy day. Dealing with the insider threat.
Wow. And someone who should have known better.
Someone who definitely should have known better.
Well, Seth, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us and sharing your knowledge and experiences in security with us. So thank you so much for talking to us.
Yeah, definitely. And if you guys ever come up with any other questions, or you wanted to do a follow-up, definitely let me know. And I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to talk to me too.
Yeah, thank you, Seth. We learned something, and I think we probably will be circling back. This is a kind of a never-ending scenario.
It definitely is. Right on, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right. Have a good one,
gentlemen.